Aquamelio, thanks for having me.
Of course, yesterday we were having this discussion, and one of the things that came up when we were commenting on the matter of the helicopter crash was the state of the equipments available to the Air Force. What do you make of the move by that was announced by the finance minister?
Well, once again, thanks for having me. The reality is that it is a modest start. Take the Navy. I've just spoken elsewhere. For about 8 years, and I stand to be corrected, the Navy did not have a single seaworthy vessel. Anything that you read about on the inventory of the Navy was just import, couldn't say. So the two, I think, is a modest start. But the two come with a capability that probably is the first in the history of the Ghana Navy. The idea that those vessels, 70 meters, offshore patrol vessels, will have the capability of, helicopters landing on them. That is an enhancement. It does suggest that somebody is thinking about integrated, or if you like, combined operations between the Navy and the Air Force, so that the Air Force could be doing maritime patrols and then could land on the vessel without having to come to land at any of the bases that we have. So it's a good start. But see, Ghana's coastline, when I did a paper on this Denu tidal wave, reminded me that it's about 350 miles or 550 kilometers. That's a wide stretch. Now, two vessels, you either keep all two at Tema and then expose your western flank, that's from Tema all the way to Sekondi Takoradi to, the Azim border, or you keep the two at Sekondi Takoradi and you expose your eastern flank, which is from Sekondi to Deno. Or you split them and put one at Sekondi and one at Tema. Whichever way you configure the deployment or the operations of these two vessels, the coastline is too wide and the exclusive economic zone is also too, vast for the two to effectively patrol. One, against piracy, and two, against poaching. You see, so obviously the Navy needs more vessels. But we need to be also mindful that the state of the economy at this time cannot make the retooling of the armed forces its primary objective. Then everything else the minister read yesterday might not have been read, because the armed forces will consume almost everything that the minister said, was going to be done. So I still say that it's a modest start. And I'll make another point maybe when I've touched on the Air Force. As of the 6th August, and as of now, there's only one helicopter, if I'm not mistaken, for the Ghana Air Force. That's the Mi-17, Russian. And then one carrier, which is the Casa 295, that does the movement of troops and executives and so on, too. The Air Force hasn't got any other capabilities. So there is a dire need there. Technically, when you even talk of a squadron, say helicopter squadron, you're talking of about 12 to 16 pieces of helicopters for one squadron. And then when you talk about the fighters, again, 12 to 16 fighters. And you talk about the carriers, 12 to 16 carriers. That's if you level yourself off at the squadron level. So the numbers that the minister mentioned, the 4 helicopters, once again, is a modest start. Now, whether they are based at Takoradi or Accra or Tamale, they are a modest start. And then the 2 transport aircraft, not fighters. What the minister said did not include any fighters. They just troop carriers or transport aircraft, and then the 4 helicopters. So the 4 would, resuscitate the helicopter capability of the Air Force a bit. And then the 2 transport, again, will hold the fort until such time that. Then you come to the Army. I think the minister talked about armored vehicles.
Yes.
I didn't hear the numbers, so I'm not sure whether he spoke about numbers. But he spoke about the money that is to be allocated to buy them.
Okay, so 19.
19 armored
Personnel
vehicles.
carriers, yes.
If a troop is about 3 or 4, depending on how you configure your regiment, the 19 is about 1 regiment. That's armored regiment. As we speak, we have more than 1. The South has 1 regiment. I think Sunyani also. There are about 3 armored regiments making up the 1 armored brigade or something like that. So once again, for the Army, the 19 is a modest start. Look, if you have time, on 2 occasions, one in Lebanon, 1984, when I was a captain as a company commander, I had only 1 armored vehicle with me. As a lieutenant colonel in Liberia, battalion commander, I didn't even have. Until such time that I made a report. And then Accra, when I say Accra, I mean Bemakam General Headquarters, decided that a counterpart battalion, because there were 2 of us, which had 2 of the armored fighters, fighting vehicles, should give me 1. So that battalion had 1, I had 1. There is no doctrine of armored warfare where armored vehicles fight in singles. They fight minimum as troops, 3 vehicles or 4 vehicles. So the 19 administratively will be fine. In operations, the equation might look different. We might end up repeating what I've said. Okay, you take 1, you take 1, you take 1. But when you deploy armored vehicles like that, they lose the protection, the mutual support, the mutual protection that they give to one another. So all said and done, given that the economy is in a reset mode, as the minister emphasized, and every sector needs resources, which the government doesn't have, everybody is being given a bit of something. Nevertheless, my sense is that, and I've been reminded in one interview that the minister said that it's going to take 4 years for some of the equipment to arrive.
Especially ones for the Air Force.
Yes. Because no manufacturer of heavy equipment that is quite critical and costs more money, produces them or manufactures them and puts them in warehouses until a buyer comes. Invariably, they produce against orders. So knowing this, when we have now procured these 4 that will arrive in 4 years, in 2027, we must be procuring for them to arrive, 4 years from 2027. That is a strategy. If we don't do that, then I think the minister is hoping that maybe out of luck, somebody who might have ordered these aircraft will go to the manufacturer. I don't know, but somebody has suggested they may be coming from France. We'll go to the manufacturer in France and say that, excuse me, we have run into difficulties with this and that and that. We are not able to, acquire the equipment. Then the manufacturer will say, okay, that's fine. Maybe I can sell the equipment off to Ghana. If we don't have that luck, then we need to wait for 4 years. The danger is that your enemy, and when I say enemy, I want to clarify, we are not referring to Togo or Cote d'Ivoire or Burkina Faso, any of our neighboring countries. We're talking about the non-state armed groups. You know, the Al-Qaeda, the Jinim, the Boko Haram. They are not going to say that, okay, you don't have your capabilities, so we'll not attack you. We'll wait until 4 years when you are fully acquired, fully equipped. We don't control that behavior of our enemies. So we have been quite irresponsible as a country to run down our defense capabilities to the extent that we need to wait for 4 years and hope and pray as many Ghanaians will do. That kind of stuff. And then get the equipment. In other words, I'm suggesting that we need a program of retooling that is not once off, but that is spread over several years and becomes cyclical. And by the time we are nearing the end of one cycle, we have already initiated, cyclical augmentation of equipment that we need. That's about the only thing that I can say. But sincerely, we've not done well as a state, as a people. Our priorities have not been right. When I say priorities, obviously, if you have these kinds of challenges, defense and security challenges, we've not even talked about the public safety side of the equation. And you want to go and build a cathedral, or for that matter, one person who has got access to public assets dips his hand into the coffers and takes 50 million for himself alone. You see? So apart from being responsible, we have allowed people without conscience to dissipate the resources of the state. All these monies that we are talking about as having been embezzled, mismanaged, stolen, these are monies that could have been used to retool the armed forces or to retool the security, institutions. And then, of course, the other socioeconomic aspects like the schools and hospitals and roads, infrastructure, and so on.
From the history you told of your own experience in the armed forces, it means that we have always been ill-equipped or under-equipped. We're just talking about recruitment yesterday. So we're recruiting people into the forces, Air Force, the armed forces, the Navy, who, if it comes to deployment, will not have the equipment that they need to confront whatever issue it is we are deploying them for.
Because our mindset is rooted in, years past, where the military was about numbers. The numbers still count. But these days, we talk about capabilities. So you could have a smaller armed force, but highly equipped to deliver results that will far exceed what a larger armed force could deliver. So in other interviews that I've granted, for instance, I've suggested that the acquisitions for the Air Force do not include fighters. I don't worry at all that the Air Force may not have fighters. Because as we speak, there are 3 battles that I've analyzed and written about recently. There was the May 12th, thereabout, Pakistan versus India. Then there was the 12th Israel versus Iran, with the U.S. somewhere on one side or somewhere in the middle. And then we have the Russia-Ukraine war. The lessons from these wars or battles show that if you have drone capabilities you can offset the threat from, armies or armed forces that are equipped with missiles and all manner of things. So the minister has not talked about drones. For the Navy, 2 vessels with the landing platforms for the Air Force, which can receive any of the 4 helicopters, that is fine. The carriers cannot land. They have to be helicopters. But imagine that the minister has said we're going to buy 1 fighter. I would have suggested that let's use the money for the fighter, assuming it's $12 million. Let's use that to acquire equivalent number of drones. You see what I mean? For observation, and those that have the capability are armed, have kinetic capability, and can attack, targets. That is the type of calculations that armies are making. Yes, those who have the resources are still maintaining their fighters and cruise missiles and so on. But increasingly, the drones have become, the capability that balances, the inequalities. And sooner or later, we need to think about the drones before we think about the fighters. That's about one example.
Okay.
You can say the same thing about the army. Look, in the Boko crisis, yes, put the armored vehicles on the ground. But armored vehicles have limited visibility. So deploy drones. I'm told we deployed drones before. As usual, as we are want to do. We deploy the drones. The batteries ran beyond their usable lives. And without the battery, the drones couldn't function. So now there are no drone capabilities in the Boko crisis. So when you buy this equipment, like the 4 helicopters and this and that and that, you must remember that the maintenance part is as much of the equation as possible. So if we deploy drones to the Boko crisis and deploy drones along our northern and other borders, they far extend the range of visibility or view that we have. In other words, they enhance our situational awareness. In real time, we're able to see far beyond where we are located. So I'm thinking that the government and the armed forces should be having this kind of dialogue or consultations to be balancing capabilities on the paper, not necessarily the numbers, but the types of capabilities, combined in certain ways that will multiply the effectiveness, if you like, of the armed forces. Like these 2 vessels with a landing platform. That's fine. But give the Navy drone capabilities, and that will multiply the effect of these 2 vessels, if you like. And the same argument will go for the Air Force and will go for, the Ghana Army. So there's a lot of work that we need to do. And I hope that we will not go to bed until 4 years later when these armored vehicles arrive. And then we'll talk about, other acquisitions, which will take another 4 years.
Colonel, thank you very much for your insights.
You're welcome, please.
Yeah, that's Colonel Festus Aboagye speaking to us. Very fantastic analysis, painted us a very vivid picture of what we have currently. But he also says, perhaps if we turn to modern warfare methods, drones among others, perhaps we'll be able to make up for this shortfall in capacity. So he expects a lot more conversations between the military and the government in terms of what is best within our circumstances and looking at our own capacity. A big thank you to Colonel for that fantastic analysis. Very, very, very helpful. Well, we're still having the discussion. In fact, we have to end the show here. There's so much to talk about in terms of this budget. And one thing I agree with was the comments made by Mr. Edward Caraway Esquire. the things you hear from this budget, and I'd like to applaud Honorable Kesala Toforsen. He's lighter on the terminologies and those things, on the technicalities. He's very light on the technicalities, focuses more on the things that the Ghanaian can identify with. So it's great, yes, all the other things that perhaps gives us an idea, an indicator of where we are going. Great to talk about them, but the focus on the simple things that we can all understand and identify with. I'd like to applaud him on that fantastic budget presented yesterday. Simple. And SM, most of the things are realistic. You can say, I am going to buy this, I am going to do that. Army has problem.
Yeah.
So we'll ensure that, okay, governments, the former government signed this contract with this particular service provider, will continue, we'll get them those equipments. Air Force has problem, we'll buy them this. Navy has problem, we'll start with this. So all of that is easier to track. Farmers will do this for you. It's a bit more, it's very, very straightforward. A lot of clarity, and it is quite helpful. But before we go, there's one more thing I need to remind you of. This is the weekend, of course. Nancy has made us a promise that he will take us to the HR Lounge. So we'll be following Nancy this weekend to the HR Lounge. Of course, if you go to the HR Lounge, you'll get to save a mouth-watering grills, gourmet local delicacies, and live band performances every weekend. And of course, there are the karaoke nights, an experience so far, and you want to come back every week. And of course, the HR Lounge comes with the HR residences. If you want fully furnished, luxurious 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, impeccably maintained for both short and long-term stays, of course, go to the HR residences. Every unit feels like it was designed for royalty or perhaps a president. So for a perfect blend of comfort, taste, and entertainment, HR residences and HR Lounge delivers emotional satisfaction with every city. You can find them on Dansuman High Street. Call them on 0593 867 086. HR Residence and HR Lounge. Simply class redefined. And this is from Ben from Medina, who says, good morning, Senna and the entire crew. Today is my birthday. I'm blessed to have shared the same birthday with Uncle Totobi Kwache and Condoleezza Rice. I'll forgive the minority today because today is my special day. I don't want to mar this celebration. So happy birthday to Ben. Ben in Medina, happy birthday to you. And of course, a happy 70th birthday, Mr. Totobi Kwache. 70 is a big number. Invite us to the party. Why? We have bought the white shirt or SM. You have white top and down. You have that.
You shoe and Babakra white.
Okay. SM is prepared. The problem is whether you sure Nancy will deliver on this promise.
She has to, because she always
is she
does.
Paying?
Is
she paying? I said, we won't go.
You're going.
I said, you only take us there. No.
We'll pay with our money.
We won't go. We'll stay home. If we have to pay with, we have not planned to go. We'll go because this one there that they will take you there for you to buy with your own money. Yeah. This American European idea we are not interested in. This is Ghana. When you carry somebody go place, you buy the thing, you chop, they go, you pay.
Or Kokra, you my cash and a tassel.
You pay for transportation. I was gonna happy birthday to Mr. Totobi Kwache. 70 years today. Oh, may the years ahead be full of good health and a lot of grace. I am Sana Numbo, Stephen Miracle, Nancy Amelowis Gekele Obimpe, who doubled as a producer for today, who did the footwork of production. Yes, because Patrick Asford did a lot of work, Eric Boating. And of course, Facebook Live is produced by Alaska B. Don't forget 30 minutes past 11. Mufta Adamu here.